Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. In this video, I would like to chat to you about the will to nothingness, and this video is going to be an introduction to what I think is the essence of the will to nothingness as it is embodied in the work of Nietzsche, right? Because I think that this concept is quite often misunderstood, and it's easy to misunderstand a concept like this because if you take this expression "will to nothingness," it's quite a striking expression, and I think that it's easy to associate with it a lot of symbols that are in fact not connected to what Nietzsche intended it to convey. So the will to nothingness is not, it's not like the desire, right? It's not the desire to destroy the world or to destroy another person. That is not the concept of the will to nothingness, even though it may appear like that is what it is. It's actually not that. The will to nothingness is something different. It's not easy to explain what it is. For this reason, I will need to go into a little bit of detail about what Nietzsche intended to mean by that. I think that really you could take the will to nothingness as representing conceptually the polar opposite of the will to power. So I made a video that can be seen on my channel on the will to power in Nietzsche versus in Schopenhauer, where there's not a will to power, and in fact it resembles in Schopenhauer a will to nothingness in a sense, but Nietzsche has this concept of the will to power, and that is what he wants for a human being, to embrace its will to power. And I think that in many ways he considers the will to nothingness to be a disease. He considers that it is not natural for a human being to embrace the will to nothingness. And as you know, or as you may not know, Nietzsche loves to call himself a naturalist, to be an examiner of nature and not to go into the domain of the spiritual. Now, I think that in Nietzsche's case, the archetype of the will to nothingness he finds in the concept of the priest and in the life of the priests, and the slave morality that is connected with the priest. And the example of his crusade against Christianity will provide me with a great opportunity to explain what the will to nothingness is for Nietzsche. So if you take the human will that Nietzsche wants to promote, it is the will of human beings that are strong. Doesn't mean that they have to be physically strong. It means that they have a temperament that is interested in turning their lives into a work of art in a certain sense, to make the most beautiful thing out of their lives, to want to fill it with meaning, to do things that are meaningful, to be ready to surprise others, to shock others, to be very daring in what they do, okay? So this is very important for Nietzsche, and this is what he calls having a grand style, having a style of life. Not just having a life, but having a style that is associated with that life. And that really represents what Nietzsche's ideal is. And he considers that there are some people that are more capable of expressing that beauty, that style, that beautiful life than others, right? But he doesn't necessarily say that there are some people that are inherently incapable of it, that it will be harder for them, that they will be at a disadvantage in some respect. But what he considers to be the greatest danger is, and in fact, it has been working out, it has been happening at the time that he's writing, is that the weak, people who are weaker than the strong, people for whom it would be more difficult to turn their lives into works that are sublime, that are beautiful, or even just people that are able to bring their lives to the maximal level of attainment as they can, but you cannot do it they lack conviction, they lack willpower, they waste their energy in envy and jealousy, in escapism on the internet or whatever. What Nietzsche says is that the greatest danger is that when these people, instead of wanting to work on themselves, to become supermen themselves, but also instead of just, if they cannot bring themselves to that level, just allowing themselves to just disappear essentially, or into the background at least, to let the great humans achieve their stylistically sublime and substantially sublime lives. When they develop resentment, that is, when they see that the strong, the ones that are cultivating the lives of superhumans, if you like, are dominating, and they feel jealousy and envy towards them. They feel a form of resentment. They feel a form of humiliation. Now, the will to nothingness is when you will the weakening of these other forces by the promotion of a network of social values, of cultural norms that promotes the opposition of these forces, which means that people that are part of those who want to promote the will to nothingness will tend to work on systems where, morally speaking, it is the cultivation of the weakness in virtue that is promoted as the greatest possible virtue. So Nietzsche mentions in particular pacifism, humility, as being embodiments of the will to nothingness, to, that manifests itself under the guise of being altruistic. He says this altruism comes from a place of resentment. It comes from a place of resentment. It comes from the fact that these people cannot do anything else than promote that because it suits them. And the priests are the maximal incarnation of that, because the priests are the weakest of all, but they have, by being very, very connected and associated with each other, they've managed to promote this system that sort of puts the shame onto the beings that are so strong that they do not respect those norms. They're too courageous. They're too brutal in some respects. They love so much. They assert themselves so much in life that they can be condemned by those who, in fact, are promoting values that are self-serving. And why is the will to nothingness opposed to the will to power? And why is it called the will to nothingness? Well, I think the simple reason is that what Nietzsche says is that if everybody was like these people, we would become extinct, essentially. That it tends towards nothingness because this framework, this system, draws its own self-generation, right? Its own sustainability from, like, being a vampire, on acting like a vampire, sucking the blood out of those who have the will to power, because it defines itself as what condemns the representatives of the will to power, and it gets its own sense of meaning, its own legitimacy, and perpetuates itself by imprisoning it, making it feel shameful, sucking out its blood, weakening it. So it's like a leech, right? But imagine that there are only leeches. They cannot leech off anything anymore, and so they die. And this is what would culminate in nothingness, is if everybody was a priest type. The priest needs, well, according to Nietzsche, that's not my position, but needs to draw force out of the forceful. And in weakening them, does not become stronger, remains weaker, but celebrates its power in weakness. But it's not a long-term plan for the world, if you like. Because if that were to culminate, eventually the world would disappear. Now, that's nothingness, as opposed to the will to power. And Nietzsche saw great danger in that, because he thought that society was very, very much stricken by that will to nothingness, not only because of what I described in terms of its nefariousness, but also because it has an amazing lasting power until it breaks down. Because he says there's no passion as consuming as the passion of resentment, which is one of the primary passions behind the will to nothingness. Because it's like a flame that will just burn anything around it, you know? And so it's a very, very strong passion. And for Nietzsche, it is a passion that has created a society which has actually, by the way, also created geniuses, created artists, has its own arts, has its own culture, and has a lot of great achievements. It's not just this black and white thing. But ultimately, it cannot last. It must end in nothingness. And that's why it is called the will to nothingness. And the Superman is the man who overcomes the will to nothingness to promote the will to power. And that's it, guys. That's how I interpret the will to nothingness. I hope that you derived some enjoyment from this video. Let me know in the comments if you find it interesting, and don't hesitate to subscribe. See you soon, guys.